Excerpt from the 437th Official Contact Report of Saturday, November 18, 2006. Source: from Palladian Pledgerant Contact Reports, Block 11, pages 49-50.
However, if I now want to say something more with regard to the happenings in Iraq and in Israel as well as Palestine and Afghanistan, then the following: warfare in the world is taking on ever worse forms, including with regard to the civil war in Iraq, where extreme Sunnis and Shiites are confusingly led in thinking that they must carry out jihad or holy war with weapons, namely both against those who believe likewise as well as against those who are of another religion, that is unbelievers, as they are called. In the case of the Sunnis and Shiites and vice versa, who fight each other, or in the case of the Taliban, it has to be said that jihad is completely misunderstood, because by this Muhammad meant something completely different than to wage war by force of arms. His real teaching, namely, was to the effect that by the jihad he understood the individual struggle of the human being against himself, herself, in order to become a good, positive, virtuous and true, dignified and honorable human being. Thus, Muhammad's teaching of jihad is fundamentally to the effect that the human being shall not wage the holy war with deadly weapons and not against other human beings, but against himself, herself, in order to gain self-cognition and truth, so that he or she can truly live in humanity as a human being and fulfill the creation laws and recommendations. But this teaching of Muhammad has been thoroughly falsified as well as wrongly interpreted, and indeed up to the present day. This has also been done with the teaching that the human being shall live rightly, well, positively and virtuously as well as law-fulfillingly and recommendation-fulfillingly, in order to be an example in an instructive wise to the children and adolescents as well as to adults of all ages, just as all the prophets taught, even if it was presented by them with other words. The fact that these parts of Muhammad's teaching, along with many others, were falsified, led to the fact that many aspects of his teaching also led to false explanations and to evil consequences, as this unfortunately still continues to have an effect today, in particular by the radical, terroristic Islamism of those confusingly led, who pass themselves off as Muslim men and Muslim women, but neither understand nor lived the teaching of Islam. True Muslim males and Muslim females see and live Islam in a different and peaceful kind and wise, thus not in war and terror against those who believe differently of their own Islamic religion or other religions. True Muslim males and Muslim females are not extremist Islamists and therefore not terrorists, for they are in truth striving to be peaceful and true human beings in self-cognition and also to live in peace and humaneness with those who are of another religion.
Those are good words.
There is, however, something more to say about this, namely, that it corresponds to a widespread misunderstanding that each Islamic war was a war of religion and that it had always been the purpose of the war to forcibly and inevitably convert the defeated peoples to Islam with the sword. Of course, there were such wars of religion, but this only applies to the early fightings of Muhammad, in which he had to raise the sword perforce against Jewish and Meccan opponents of the Madanese community, otherwise he would have been murdered with his followers. Surah 9-5 solely refers to this, in which the following was taught in the real original form by Muhammad.
And when the forbidden months have passed, then resist your adversaries who serve tin gods, where you meet them, seize them, and besiege them, and lie in wait for them in their own ambush, to put them in captivity. But only deprive them of their lives when self-defense requires it. But if they repent, then put mercy before justice. Let them pay the zakati, tax for the poor, and give them the freedom that they can go their way.
But since the falsification of this aphorism has found its entrance into Islam, it has been taught and also translated in the following form:
And when the forbidden months have passed, then kill the servants of 10 gods where you meet them, and seize them and besiege them, and lie in wait for them in every ambush. But if they repent and if they do the prayer and pay the zakati, tax for the poor, then grant them their way. Truly, Allah is all-forgiving, benevolent.
Or another translation version:
Slay the servants of 10 gods where you find them. But if they repent and do the prayer and pay the poor tax, then let them go their way.
The truth is that neither in this nor in other teaching verses has Muhammad spoken thereof, that enemies should simply be beaten to death and killed, but he spoke about the fact that this may be the case only in actual self-defense. As at all times, when Muhammad's effective and true teaching was falsified, it is then further falsified by wannabe knowing scribblers, in which case insults of the prophets and untrue ragbag stories become the norm. In fact, it would be necessary, as with the Talmud manual, that Muhammad's teaching be post-written in accordance with how he actually brought his teaching. Now, as far as the effectiveness with regard to Islamic wars is concerned, in the later history of Islam, many wars were purely secular wars of conquest, as such have been connected with every migration of peoples since time immemorial. This was also the case in the conquest of Palestine by the ancient Hebrews, as well as in all Germanic, Arabic and other worldwide migrations of peoples. And as with Christianity in the 7 Crusades, etc., the Arab wars of conquest also had a characteristically religious background which in particular is willingly overlooked, concealed or disputed by Christianity in regard to its own wars of conquest. Now, the fact in the Islamic wars of conquest is that, even though there was a religious background, the defeated peoples fundamentally recognized the Islamic suzerainty by simply paying the required tribute. However, as far as their religion, that is their belief and their worship were concerned, as well as the civil regulations, they could thus keep everything without having had to make amends for it or having been forced to Islam. The Islamic idea of theocracy did not exclude, but rather included, tolerance toward those who were of another religion, for submission was of purely political form. Of course, there have been fanatics since the year one and also since every beginning, as with Christianity and all religions, except Buddhism, in Islam, who used Muhammad's teaching in a wrong and falsified wise for their claims for might and actually tried to spread Islam with the sword, which is why this has also spread as knowledge worldwide and unfortunately is not to be denied. But those acted in such a wise were not real Muslims, but Ozgtet fanatics who utilized falsified teaching parts for their own benefit. So, if also I speak, talk or write about it, such as in the book Eine Offenswort, an open word, in German only, that facts are to be quoted in the teaching of Islam, which are connected with war, the sword, murder and manslaughter, etc., then it exclusively concerns facts that have arisen due to the falsification of the Quran and which have nothing to do with the effective truth and reality, because Muhammad had not brought a teaching of war and murder, but a teaching of love, of truth, freedom, harmony and of peace for all human beings on the earth, and indeed irrespective whatsoever of what race, religion, other belief orientations or which people and which social status they belong to. He did so in the same wise as all the prophets of his line before him and after him.
Good words again, but that is not surprising.
If it were different, then you would not be the proclaimer who brings the teaching of the Spirit as well as the teaching of the truth and the teaching of the life.
Translation by Bruce Lola of USA, with corrections Mariana Inner of Switzerland.